On this edition of TLC Elementary School, visit China and get to know some of the many people and places that make up this huge country. First, learn how to write Chinese from a master calligrapher. Then, tour the Forbidden City, one of the most extravagant palaces in the world. And finally, meet some young athletes living and training in modern China and see why they work long and hard to bring honor to their country. Segment 1. Write Chinese.
The people of China continue to practice many traditions from ancient times. One of these traditions is a form of writing called calligraphy. John Wang learned calligraphy from his father and has devoted his life to preserving this ancient tradition. Chinese calligraphy was developed more than 3,000 years ago, between 2000 and 1000 BC. The characters in this written language began as pictures. For example, the symbol for the sun was drawn as a picture of the sun. Over time, it was changed into this. The symbol for water was originally drawn this way. It looked like a stream. Today, this is how it is drawn. To practice the art of Chinese calligraphy, there are 5 principles you should know. The first is posture. It is important to sit up straight and to be balanced. The second principle is a good knowledge of the tools. The handle of this brush pen is made from bamboo, and the brush from animal hair. The third principle is control. You must know how to control the brush, and this is only achieved with a lot of practice. The fourth principle is rhythm. Notice how these characters seem to flow smoothly down the page. The fifth principle is balance. That is, making sure that all the lines are the right thickness and length. Chinese calligraphy is an art, like painting. It is easy to see why the Chinese consider this ancient art form to be one of their cultural treasures.
Segment 2. The Forbidden City.
This is the story about one of the world's most extravagant palaces. It is also the story about some of the men and women who rarely left its confines over a span of 500 years of Chinese imperial rule. When the Forbidden City was built in the early 1400s, nearly 700 years ago, it was the biggest complex of palaces in the world. It still is. The city was forbidden because those allowed inside came from a very selective group. Built to protect royalty from the impure souls outside the palace walls, the city required 100,000 workers who labored for 14 years to construct 900 buildings and more than 9,999 rooms in dozens of palaces. Here, dynastic rulers passed on their power from father to son for generations. During the Ming Dynasty, 20,000 people lived in the city, and all of them worked for one man, the Emperor of China. Every morning, the emperor's slaves dressed him from a selection of 1,000 different gowns. Most of them were yellow, a color that symbolized power. In the imperial throne room, yellow was everywhere. But there was also red for good luck, and the imperial dragons to bring the rains and make the land prosper. The Emperor Kang Chi ascended the throne in 1661 and ruled for 61 years. The Chinese believed that the emperor's power came from heaven. His position was at the center of the universe. But Kang Chi knew his authority had limits. He brought astronomers from the West, Jesuit priests, who told him about the stars and the eclipses of the sun and the moon. The emperor used this knowledge to create the yearly calendar, earmarked with dates for planting and harvesting crops. Everyone in the Forbidden City was devoted to the heir apparent, Yin Rin. The little boy received the best education possible, for he was being prepared for power. But 30 years later, the father would be ashamed of his son. For 60 years, Kang Chi had been emperor in the Forbidden City. It had been a time of prosperity, but there was no joy now. The problem was Yin Rin, his favorite son. A secret network of spies had told the emperor that his son was unfit to rule. Yin Rin was cruel and corrupt. He had stolen money from the imperial court. And worst of all, Kang Chi discovered his son had started a rebellion against him. He had even made plans to execute the emperor, his own father. Kang Chi died in December of 1722, but not before he disinherited his treacherous son. The next emperor, Kang Chi's younger son, Yang Zhen, was more fortunate. He was succeeded by his eldest son, Qinlong. Although Qinlong was a strong ruler with the power of an army behind him, the rest of the world had begun to question the strength of the Chinese dynasty. In Europe, new empires looked toward China with ambitious eyes. In the late 1700s, the British East India Company was eager to trade with China. So England sent a special envoy to the Forbidden City to negotiate a treaty with the emperor to allow British traders free access to China. But the Emperor Qinlong refused to meet with the British representative, Lord Macartney, and sent a note refusing his request. 7 years later, Qinlong died. But the trade problem still existed. British demand for Chinese goods, porcelain, silk, and tea, increased. But the British were reluctant to trade silver for these goods. Finally, Britain found a commodity to trade with China without depleting her own resources: opium, imported from India. When Chinese authorities tried to stop the opium trade, the British sent in their gunboats. A war ensued, and 20 years later, the Treaty of Tianjin in 1858 turned over China's ports and all of her international trade to Western control. The power of the Chinese dynasty had come to an end. Still, Imperial China pretended nothing was wrong. The Dowager Empress Su Shi organized a coup when the emperor died and installed their 6-year-old son as his successor. But the power behind the throne was all hers. Although life went on as usual in the Forbidden City, riots erupted across the nation in the late 1800s. These riots were known as the Boxer Rebellion. Starving peasant farmers had finally organized to rid the empire of Western barbarians. The rebellion produced a bloodbath. Troops from Europe arrived in force. The imperial family fled the Forbidden City, and soldiers entered its gates. For the first time, outsiders stood, uninvited, at the Dragon Throne. It was the beginning of the end of Chinese dynastic rule. In 1911, China became the Republic of China. In 1949, the People's Republic of China was founded. The days of glory for the imperial family were over, once and for all.
Segment 3. Young Athletes.
If you want to be a champion gymnast, you have to have a flexible body and powerful muscles. For diving, you need a slender body and arms and legs that allow you to enter the water smoothly. Great athletes have strength, endurance, coordination, and lots of skill. They practice hard even when they don't want to. They train their muscles to move in extraordinary ways. But most of all, they understand how their body works, and they push it to its limits. In some sports, like diving and gymnastics, training to become a great athlete starts when you are still really young. The Chinese have had the best diving teams in the world and won more gold medals than any other country. One of the reasons why they do so well is that they start training their athletes early.
There is a belief that the younger you can get the talent and start to develop it, the more it pays off.
The best age to be competing is around 15, and it takes 5 years to make it to that level. So I have to look for potential athletes who are about 10 years old.
In order to find these young athletes, coaches from all over China search for children who have the body types to be great divers.
For diving, you need a particular type of body, which allows you to make a graceful line as you enter the water. And for this, you need well-proportioned arms and legs. For example, if an athlete's arms are too short in here, if when they raise their arms, their elbows are not above the top of their head, then they can't straighten their arms. Their arms are bent. That affects the amount of splash as they enter the water. These days, our divers need shoulder joints that are strong but more flexible. This is the best combination.
Because there are so many divers to choose from, the competition is tough. These divers have been chosen from local teams all over China. They have come to Nanying for 3 months of hard training. Only a few of them will be selected for the national and Olympic teams. To be on one of these teams is an honor, but it takes a lot of hard work.
There is a lot of training, and it's very rigorous. Life consists of the dining hall, the dormitory, and the training pool. It can get a bit monotonous. You can't just go out or wander around the streets because you have to conserve your energy. It's a hard life.
You have to keep getting better if you want to stay on the team. It's not just about being a good diver, it's about being excellent.
Come on, guys. I didn't see one good dive. If you dive like this in the competition, you'll be finished. You could kiss goodbye to the title, understand? You have to take a scientific approach to training. What's unique about Chinese diving is the land training we do before moving into the water. This is crucial.
They practice their dives with a rope that holds them up. This way, the young divers don't have to worry about getting hurt, and they can practice their dives over and over again before trying them in the water.
In leading up to the 92 Olympics, I was still very young and lacked consistency. Well, one of my dives was the 3.5 backward somersault. I just couldn't get it right. So we practiced day after day for about a month. In the competition, it was my 7th dive, and it came off brilliantly.
Even with all their training, practice is the only way to become a great diver. Gymnastics is a lot like diving. Gymnasts also practice hard and start training at an early age.
My name is Jiang Xiaogong. I'm the principal of the sports kindergarten. We are now in the girls' gymnastic training center. Our pupils here are aged between 4 and 6. Our aim is to select and train athletes from an early age so as to develop quality athletes for the nation.
Female gymnasts usually compete until they are 18 years old. Since it takes about 10 years of training to be really good, they have to start before they are 8 years old. Meng Fei is 15 and she has been training to be a gymnast almost all her life. She is a member of the Chinese national gymnastics team. Her coaches and her parents all want her to win, and so there is a lot of pressure on her to succeed.
We know placing such high hopes on a young child makes it difficult for her. But no matter how tough it gets, we'll tell her, no pain, no gain.
So Meng Fei practices every day to be a champion.
Firstly, to become a champion gymnast, an athlete must have a strong will. Strong will and character are very important. Secondly, gymnasts have to be prepared to accept greater hardship than ordinary children, as the training is very tough.
At the end of another week's training, I worked mainly on the vaulting horse, particularly somersaults. I had problems with springing off the board. I kept raising my head instead of tucking it under. I have to relax more on the balance beam, not tense up. My hand swing is too rushed. I need to keep a natural rhythm. To perfect a routine, you have to repeat it thousands of times, otherwise you'll never get it right. You just have to hang in there. You just have to grit your teeth and keep going.
It's tough to be a young athlete. You have to give up a lot in order to succeed. Sometimes it seems unbearable. The pressure is too much. The work is too hard. But some young athletes have a strong will. They keep trying and they become champions.